Welcome to Nasdaq TradeTalks, where we meet with the top thought leaders and strategists in emerging technologies, digital assets, a regulatory landscape, and capital markets. This segment is presented by Charles Schwab. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, and joining me on the desk at the Nasdaq market site, we have Dr. John Mitchell, President and CEO of the Global Electronics Association, as well as Grant Geyer, Chief Strategy Officer of Claroty. We're here to discuss electronics and securing the layer behind modern life and today's supply chain. It is great to have the both of you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks. John, great to have you on set again with us. Give us a brief background, remind us of the Global Electronics Association and the work that you're doing.
Sure, the Global Electronics Association really covers the entire ecosystem of the electronics industry, so from chips all the way down to materials, as well as how you put it together, as well as the OEM. So literally about a little over 3,000 companies that we convene together to work on standards, we work on education, we do advocacy work with the government, et cetera.
Right, and tell us about the work you're doing at Claroty.
Yeah, so if we think about the area of IT security, we're very familiar with that. But what some of us may not realize is that industrial automation, connected hospitals, all rely upon connected IoT devices to keep automation going, to keep patients safe, to keep the global economy going, and also, in essence, to safeguard society. And Claroty focuses on helping to protect these assets through vulnerability and risk management to help prevent hackers from taking over and sabotaging these environments.
And what's so interesting is it really is the hidden background of modern life and something that we take for granted every day. I mean, look at the show that we're doing right now, the amount of electrical components that go into it that we're not even aware of while we're sitting here on set.
I mean, you have to look no further than in April of this year, a dam in Western Europe was hacked, causing 100 liters per second for 4 hours before somebody noticed. Similarly, the JLR hack that happened just in August of this year that landed to almost just about a month of downtime. And so the cyber physical systems with one leg in the digital world and the other leg in the physical world are now the new frontier of cyber attacks. Critical infrastructures are being targeted by nation states and cyber criminals that are looking to cause national security harm, economic security harm, and also risk to public safety.
Yeah, so cybersecurity at the end of the day, John, is fundamental to preserving trust in these infrastructures.
Well, and as you're saying, it affects every single industry. It is really, the electronics are hidden behind it, whether it's agriculture, AI, automotive, aerospace. Electronics power everything that we do. And so if that becomes at risk, there is nowhere that's safe. And so we definitely have to secure our supply chains on the electronics front.
You know, one of the things, John, that I read in one of the GEA standards that I know has been reissued a few times is around componentry within electronics. And so many people may not be aware, but in 2021, the US government issued the National Defense Authorization Act, Section 889, that basically specified no US government entity could acquire several Chinese telecommunications manufacturers' equipment because of concerns that China may have planted backdoors through chips that were put into telecommunications electronics.
Yeah, there's a lot of, especially on the defense side, the Defense Department is, or I guess it's the Department of War now, is more aware, I think, of these challenges, but they really do trickle out through everyday devices.
Yeah, they certainly think about Internet of Things, right? IoT, it's virtually impossible not to be connected.
That's right. And if you're not connected, we don't know who you are.
I mean, even something like the Ring app, as an example, we think about it, from a consumer perspective as convenience, as safety, and so forth, and that seems to be prioritized over what the risks may be. I mean, you can only be aware of so much as a consumer, I guess.
Right, and everybody thinks intuitively about hacking software.
Right.
But there's also hardware hacks that we talk about in these IoT devices. Your Ring device is made up of hundreds of components, and you need to make sure each one of those pieces there. And so cybersecurity really comes down to trust, because if just one piece along the entire supply chain, you lose that trust or can damage it, it's not just affecting that company, it affects everything else downstream. And so we really need to be looking at what are the challenges at every step of the supply chain process.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, where we're sitting right here in Times Square, New York City, and New York City in general, I mean, there's cameras all over the place, right? And think about all the components that go into that and where vulnerabilities can lie because of that.
So just earlier this year, the NSA, along with its international partners, released an advisory stating that Russia, for the past 2 years, has been hacking into public cameras on border crossings, ports, logistics firms in order to get physical eyes on equipment being sent into Ukraine in terms of support or in terms of warfighting equipment. And so the culprits behind it, not surprisingly, were Russia. But this is an example that where the IoT devices that exist on our streets can be used for surveillance and potentially, in the case of Ukraine, kinetic targeting from a warfighting perspective of supply chains.
So what about standardizing this then, right? If we know that there are vulnerabilities as it relates to surveillance, as an example, why not standardize the process of modeling and building out these products?
That's very much a critical component to it. You have to have visibility and accountability, and to do that, you have to have a common language. And so standards provide that common language, whether you're producing something within country or with friendly nations, it doesn't matter. You have to have that common basis for that. And that's one of the things the Global Electronics Association focuses on, is convening industry, pulling people together to get them to talk, to work together, whether it's the customers, whether it's the assemblers, whether it's the materials or components. We all need to be working together to this, and there's really no part that isn't important.
Right. So is there a standard that exists? Tell us about this IPC 1792.
Yeah, so the 1792 is something that the industry has come together to really standardize cybersecurity in the manufacturing place, all right? And we've had the then Department of Defense, now the Department of War, was part of that as well as companies from all over the world. So you're really looking at every single step of that process, and it's available today as a first step. And it keeps getting revised every year or two because the challenges keep changing, and that's the whole process of a global standard that is managed by industry. Industry has a lot of interest in keeping it up to date. Governments, it sometimes takes a little while for those to agree.
Yeah, well, it certainly does, and not to mention the technology is evolving quicker than policymakers can put a cybersecurity framework in place, just speaking about the U.S. specifically. So, frameworks such as 1792, or NIST as an example when it comes to response plans, they do exist, when you think about it from a self-regulatory perspective. Are we doing good here? Are we mitigating threats more effectively?
Well, the funny thing is, I feel like it's a game of cat and mouse, that every time we feel like we have got our arms around and instrumented a set of problems, new technology advancements create a new attack surface area. And that's why I think the work of both the GEA does, as well as US government and its international partners, have worked on a secure by design initiative. And it goes back to kind of Lean Six Sigma mindset, that where sometimes we think that if you have a problem that gets released, it grows linearly, but it doesn't. The problem grows exponentially. And that's why it's so important to get security and quality right from the start. And security means things like having good software development life cycles, good testing, a commitment from leadership. And secure by design ensures that you're not making these problems worse by implementing secure components with secure configurations at the time you break ground on a new plant or the time you roll out new MRIs at a hospital, fundamental to securing the environment.
I wonder if there's a way to quantify this, to see if progress is being made?
So I believe progress is being made. Mm-hmm. The best way we continue to make progress is through things like self-assessments. Each company needs to be looking internally and identifying the gaps, because standard setting bodies aren't aware of everything happening. And so if you have your internal group saying, okay, how could I break this down? How would I attack this? Because you're going to know your processes better than anybody else. And then so you identify those gaps, you bring them to an external convened group that can go work on that, and then the industry doesn't have to discover them piecemeal. We can lift the entire industry together by collaborating.
Yeah, it's interesting because of the competitive nature of all these industries. We talk about technology, financial services, of course, stands out when it comes to the competitive nature of it. But that rush to get internal and external facing products out there as it relates to what we understand with AI from the consumer and enterprise perspective, some of those gaps are starting to be recognized now, and understanding one of the vulnerabilities lies. So even for cyber practitioners, becoming a partner of the business and not getting stuck where you're siloed again, I think is critical to this.
And there are specific competitive advantage things that people just aren't going to share. That's what makes their business. But the majority, 85, 90% of what you do is pretty commonplace. And so sharing those pieces can do a lot of lifting. And then you have to to cover your own competitive advantage or IP areas, you need to implement your own things internally. But in general, if you don't communicate that message out there, you're going to run into inconsistencies. If company A is implementing 6 different protocols and company B does 6 different protocols, well, they're not talking together. And that actually creates more risk, because now if somebody is trying to break into either a component or to a software system that isn't working similarly, well, it's those edge cases where they don't talk exactly the same, where you have those vulnerabilities where people can attack.
Yeah, and I think this is where public-private partnerships are so crucial, right?
Yeah, totally. So a couple of points is, first of all, resilience is the key. And when I say resilience, I don't just mean from an organizational perspective, I mean from a community perspective. Right. One of the things that Claroty does is we hold a conference every year called Nexus, where we actually bring competitors in from different companies in the automotive industry, food and bev industry. They sit at the same tables, and under Chatham House rules, they have open conversations about things that they are doing to help secure their environment. So it is one area where different organizations collaborate fully. I will say that, again, US government and a lot of its international partners have also been doing a great job at collaborating both with each other as well as with the public through the ISACs and these SRMA models. So there is a lot of great partner-private collaboration, but the key is establishing coalitions. So in the case of a crisis, you have partners to turn to for advice or support to help address some of these vexing challenges.
Yeah, I would also argue that this is where academia and sandboxes come in as well, because you don't have, there's more willingness to data share in those environments.
There is something else that Grant mentioned a little bit earlier, I think also comes to play. It really needs to come from top down, this attitude, because cybersecurity is the responsibility not of IT teams, or I should say, not just of IT teams. It's the responsibility of literally every single employee. So whether you're a factory worker, a delivery person, as opposed to a designer, everybody has to be thinking about this, because there's vulnerabilities at the human level in many different places that can compromise the most secure systems if you're not taking care.
John, you're spot on that. Like, we have right now as we speak, I just took a look earlier today. There are thousands of systems of building automation systems connected directly to the internet with insecure protocols, meaning any attacker could go in, shut off the HVAC, shut off physical security for 4,000 buildings around the world with minimal effort. And why does that happen? Because facility teams don't understand security in the same way that you're taught that don't click on attachments that you don't know, don't respond to emails of individuals you're not familiar with. The same thing, a plant operator in a manufacturing environment needs to understand what their role is as the first line of defense to help ensure that components and automation is implemented in a cyber secure way.
I mean, that's a staggering number, and
it's everybody.
I mean,
it's literally everybody.
Yeah.
We see medical devices connected directly to the internet. There are automation components, PLCs, HMIs, engineering workstations connected directly to the internet, some with no authentication, and a hacker could literally cause sabotage to a production line.
Yeah, I mean, talk about art imitating life. I can't remember the exact name of the movie. It might have been a John Grisham movie, but it was about 30 years ago, where a hacker
You looked at me when you said 30 years ago, like I'm the old guy here.
No,
Thank you.
I think we might have even brought this up before, but where the hacker in this story hacked the president's pacemaker. This is 30 years ago. Now think about the hacks that we're talking about right now, right? Because of everything's connected, IoT,
well, and
so
cars are becoming more connected.
Yeah.
They cause accidents. There's all different kinds of things.
Like the point that you said, 3,000 to 4,000
building automation
are vulnerable right now.
Right now. In addition to that, our Team 82 was able to buy a patient monitor that hospitals use today, and they were able to hack it to demonstrate that you could have a patient going through cardiac arrest, and you could make it look like the patient was healthy.
Right.
Or vice versa. And we demonstrated on that stage with the researcher connected, and you could see his heartbeat pumping and then went to flatline. So these things are possible because fundamentally, whether it's hardware or software, it all has software and logic inside of it, which can be, there are so many ways that it could be attacked for those desiring malfeasance to impact patients or impact industrial automation.
And all these examples go to why it needs to be embedded in the culture.
That's right.
Right, not just checking the boxes for ethical compliance and so forth, but
that's right. It can't be check the box.
Right.
You really have to be thinking deeply about it. AI can actually be a very strong tool in trying to explore vulnerabilities. On the other side, if you're a nefarious person, you can be using AI to expose those vulnerabilities as well. And so with every advancement and every tool, there's a plus and then there's a risk as well. And so we just need to figure out better ways to manage those risks in our systems so that we're identifying them, building walls around them, protocols to make sure that the right people are accessing them so that we don't have people shutting off HVAC systems.
Yeah, I mean, if this is not advocating for removing silos, I don't know what is. But if you think about all of the possibilities, and it's almost like, you know, Moore's Law, it's even beyond that at this point. It's just evolving so quickly.
Well, again, every change dramatically increases the attack surface area. Our reliance on digital technologies give us so many societal advantages and business advantages, but the soft underbelly of that is digital risk. And so a different take on silos, there's a good kind of silo, which is segmentation or multi-factor authentication. Nothing will ruin a hacker's day faster than putting segmentation or multi-factor authentication in place, because if you can't get to an asset, you can't hack it.
Yeah.
But I think you guys just put out a report as well that talked about, you know, all of this change actually exposes more risks. So even, you know, governments making different regulatory changes or legislative changes, trade changes, et cetera, those open gaps while they're being sorted out because it's now not the same process and people are unfamiliar with the process. And so I believe you put a report out that talked about that the increased trade tensions are driving more risk in the supply chain.
Yeah, that's right. So basically the realignment of global supply chains is causing, with the diversification of suppliers, new individuals need to get access to the plants or need access to the hospitals.
Yep.
And you need to, if you don't have clear understanding of who has access to what, you can inadvertently let hackers into the building.
Yeah.
And you're trying to recertify groups that typically you spend a lot of time recertifying, but now because of time pressures, you've had to shift and you have to do things faster. And so that opens risk as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, I mean, it's almost Cyber 101. You're only going to allow people to have certain access to certain applications, right? I mean, not everyone can be an admin within the organization. So when you're thinking about shifting around something as massive as, you know, global trade.
These global supply chains are very complex. And when you shut down one channel due to a trade restriction or any other restriction, it doesn't have to be just trade, suddenly you have to find something new. And anytime you introduce new, there's opportunity for risk. And if you're trying to do new fast and multiple times, more risk.
And that goes back to cat and mouse from what you said from the beginning.
Totally, and part of the even more complex challenge here is one thing that if you know all the employees, as we came up here, everyone knew who you were as we came into the building, right? You know people who you know the people in your organization, but when you have third-party suppliers coming in that are doing work, you may not know if the employee still is an employee and was his or her access shut off. And so this is the area of identity governance, making sure that you have some ability to attest that the individual still needs access and being able to manage what we call the joiner, mover, leaver process, manage their life cycle, their identity life cycle through the course of their employment.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many components, pardon the pun, as it relates
Yes,
to
it goes everywhere.
the electrical to the electronics industry. Appreciate both of your insights. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.